I'm going to tell you two stories about my time in education. I can tell you two stories about my time in education. One story is about a rebellious kid, didn't want to go to school, was a pain in the ass for all my teachers and my parents, and skipped a lot of classes, and he didn't know what education was all about. He didn't understand it. And the other story is about a sensitive kid that didn't feel at home in school and felt quite vulnerable and insecure. And both stories are, for me, two sides of the same coin. And I remained insecure for a long time, and I tried to overcome that by doing all sorts of things that were rebellious. So I tried to look for boundaries and look for borders, and I challenged parents and teachers to set some boundaries and borders in order for me to feel safe. And I thought that sort of one of the boundaries and borders that I wanted to challenge was going abroad. And I wrote into higher education because I didn't want to go to the military. And so I signed up for higher education. And in my second year, I had to do an internship. And I wanted to do that internship abroad. So I applied for several jobs in Paris, in London, in New York, and also at the famous department store Harrods in London. They called me to do an application interview. I went over, and I did the interview and got the job. So there I went, 20 years old, up to London, 10 million people, and I started working there. And on my third day, I was standing in a department, shoveling around some sweatshirts, and this guy walks by. And he stops, and he turns around. And he looks at me, and he says to me, "Who are you?" And I say, I'm Peter. And my instinct was, "Who are you?" But I didn't say that. So he said, "Come with me." And so I went with him, and we went to the top floor, into the management offices. And I later learned that only 30 or 40 people were allowed in there. And there were bodyguards of the owner standing there. And I was sat down at a couch, big leather couch, and I was in front of this big office. And the door was open, and people were going in and out, and he was making phone calls. And I was sitting there, going like, "Oh my God, what am I doing here?" And one person that left the room slammed the door, and on the door it said "Managing Director." I was like, "Oh boy, where am I?" So I was sitting there, and he called me and said, "Come in." So I went in, and we did an interview for 50 minutes. And he said, "I don't know why, but I like you, and I want you to work for me." So I was like, "Okay." I started working for him, and what made him distinct from all the other things I learned in education was that he wouldn't look for the things that I couldn't do. He would look for the things that I was good at. And he would let me do things that I mastered. We would evaluate them, and then he let me do more of that. And he would give me loads of compliments. And for me, that was sort of completely different from my time in education, where everything was focused on the things I couldn't do. So that left me with a lot of self-confidence, and it gave me trust in who I was and what I could do. And for me, that guy was a teacher. I didn't meet him in school. I met him somewhere else. And for me, that's the magic moment in education, when a teacher meets a student. And coming into this talk, I talked to a lot of people about education. And most people don't talk about systems or how the building was or stuff like that. Most people remember people, a person, a face, a name. And I would like to ask you to go back to your time in education and remember a face or a name of a person that saw more in you than you thought you ever could be. And most people remember a person like that. I think that's also the essence of being a teacher. It's of vital importance that we need people that see children for the value that they are. And it's 20 years ago. I'm now here today, and I work in education. I work in schools. And my job is to help teachers to see children for who they really are. And I do that by using solution-focused coaching. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but the basis is to accept where the child is and who he is. Look for the qualities that the child has. Look for potential and build on that by giving compliments. So accept, look, and then build. And the best way to explain solution-focused coaching is to give you an example. And the example I'm going to give you was at a school where I worked with all the staff and all the teachers. And this teacher called me and said, like, can you join me in a conversation with a kid? And it's probably going to be the last conversation I'm going to have with this kid because he's going to be expelled, because he's always late and he falls asleep during class, and so he's not doing well and his grades are very low. So we joined to have this conversation with this kid, and this kid comes in and he looked really pale and very tired. And like people who work with teenagers, I have to say teenager instead of kid, but teenagers know how that works. They come in and they don't want that conversation. So he was sort of in the whatever mode. And we were going to have a conversation with him, but he wasn't sure he was ready for the conversation with us. So he sat down and we talked, and he started explaining his situation. And the situation was that his father was always out. His mother was in some sort of a depression, he told us. He didn't have any brothers or sisters. And his basic day was going home from school and sit behind a computer. And around 6 o'clock, he would go down, go to the fridge, get some food out, put it in a microwave, eat it, go up to his computer, and play games till 3, 4 in the night. That's why he was so tired. And and the teacher and I were looking at each other, so like, well, accept where he is, accept who he is, look for potential, find some compliments. And we couldn't find an angle to go into this conversation. So at the end of the conversation, we were looking and said, well, the teacher sort of sat back a little, and then he asked loosely asked, what is it exactly that you do on that computer? And the kid sort of looks at us and says, like, well, I play a game, and it's a game of being a fighter pilot. And it's a global game. Thousands of people are playing it. And I'm one of the top 5 players in the game. And we were like, okay. And it takes a lot of focus and concentration to be in that game, a lot of hours. And a lot of friends of mine are envying me because I have so much time to play it. And because they are not allowed to play it for so long hours. And I help them via the chat. I help them all the time to get to the next level because they don't know where the hidden treasures are and stuff like that, so I help them. So he was constantly online helping friends and being social and being able to plan and he could focus for long hours and basically all the things that a good fighter pilot needs. And he said, yeah, I'm playing that game because I think it's the only way to become a fighter pilot, because that's my dream. And you could see him sort of from being a sort of a slow kid, so he was completely awake in the conversation. We chatted for a little bit longer, and then one of us, I don't know who asked it, but one of us asked sort of, and how does it work in the game? Yeah, there are levels, and I'm almost at the top level, and my friends are way down. And he asked, on doing your homework, on what level are you? And he looked at us and was like, well, it's a level 4, I think. And this kid was trained to sort of play himself down, so well, level 4. And he said, like, your friends, on what level are they? And he said, well, level 16, 17. And you could see him going like, oi. So him being a competitive kid, kind of like, that's not right. I want to change that. And so he became even more awake. And And we asked him, how do you do your homework? He said, well, I have a really old computer, and we don't have much money, so it takes 10 minutes for the computer to start up, and that's when I do my homework. But sometimes, when the computer goes to the next level, or it takes 5 minutes for the computer to reload. So maybe it's a good idea if I take those 5 minutes to do some more homework. And I looked at him and said, are you sure? That's a 50% increase of your time doing homework. He said, well, I can do that. And I said, well, and that's solution-focused coaching as well. He said, so by doing only 10 minutes of homework, you're able to get 4s and 5s already? And he said, yeah. I said, you're a pretty effective learner, aren't you? He said, well, if you put it like that. So we talked a little bit long, and later on the teacher had a couple of more conversations. The kid got higher grades, went to the next class. 2 years later, he left middle school. He went on to higher education in Holland to pursue his dream to become a fighter pilot. And that was something different than being expelled from school. So, and the essence of the example is, accept where he is, look for potential, and make him grow by giving compliments. And for me, and for that kid, probably we were the teachers seeing more in him than he ever thought he could be. And for me, the first person I met seeing more in me than I ever thought I could be was 20 years ago. In a moment, you will leave this room and leave this conference, and I have a question for you. When you go out and you meet a kid, or a teenager, or a student, or just young people, meet them and look where they are. Accept them for who they are. Look for their potential and give them some compliments. So then 20 years' time from now, maybe one of those kids will remember your face, or your name. And they will say, that person saw more in me than I ever thought I could be.